century-long romance with the automobile, the passion has never burned brighter than with hot rods. Be they immaculate show cars, gritty racers, or somewhere in between, hot rods embody the core values that made this country great. Innovation, competition, improvisation, good looks, fast cars, and the relentless drive to succeed, as told by the legends, old and new, who lived it. This is the incredible true story of an American icon, the hot rod. Hello, I'm Chip Foose. For decades, hot rodding was a blue-collar, dirt-under-your-fingernails pursuit. Although the cars were a symbol of creativity and personal expression, they were also loud, fast, and often unreliable. The late 1970s saw the baby boomer generation grow older with more disposable income. So while men like Bruce Meyer and Pete Chaporis were restoring old hot rods, a new crop of builders burst onto the scene to create new ones. Dubbed street rods, these cars were not cobbled together by modifying existing parts. They were one-off creations that incorporated a host of new ideas, like exotic Italian engines, modern running gear, and crazy concept-style bodies. The hot rod was transformed from a symbol of blue-collar counterculture expression to modern art fit for a gallery. While most people in the culture agreed that the craftsmanship was impeccable, a line in the sand had been drawn between the people who love traditional hot rods and those that prefer modern street rods.
I think really the difference between hot rods and street rods is a hot rod is big, loud engine, blowers sticking out the hood, a guy that wants to work on his car, a real hot rodder that, built his own engine, drives it around, and he's constantly tinkering with it. Not everybody wants to do that. We have guys that go, I love these hot rods, but I want to have air conditioning. I need a top. I need a heater. I need to be able to be comfortable. I want to do this as a family. And I think that's where street riding came in.
It's completely different than our old days when we put the cars together with axes and hammers, and they do such a magnificent job nowadays.
What's so great about street rods is that we have all the technology that they've developed. We've got great brakes, we've got great steering, we've got great drive lines and powertrains. And I mean, I can actually get in my hot rod today, drive to New York, and no, nothing's going to happen.
Everything became very, very smooth, very sleek. You had original designs being created, cars that were first created as a clean sheet of paper design. They had aspects of a 32 Roadster or another older hot rod body, but they were really brand new bodies. They were very sleek and very smooth. Those cars nowadays are like Fabergé eggs. I mean, they're perfect.
They took hot rodding to another place. They're still hot rods, and they're beautifully done. They're not my cup of tea, but it doesn't mean that I didn't like everything that they did. We're more traditionally based. There's room for everybody. That's what's so beautiful about hot rodding. There's just room for us all.
This new attention to detail created a buzz in the industry and a new class of high-dollar clientele. Builders like Steve Moll and Roy Brizio began to reinvent what people thought of the hot rod. But there was one man who really pushed his new style out into the public. That man was Boyd Coddington, one of my mentors and someone who helped turn my hobby into a career. He was a machinist who transplanted himself from Idaho to Southern California to chase his hot rod dream.
Boyd Coddington was a fellow that brought in what I would call the smooth kind of billet style. Not traditional, but very much a style of hot rodding that was very popular in the 80s and 90s.
Boyd likes smooth lines. Everyone at the time was doing a lot of graphics. Boyd just took away all the graphics and he just had nice clean paint, nice smooth lines. He had an idea in his mind on what he wanted to produce and how he wanted hot rodding to look. And it took him years. It took him 10 years working part-time at Disneyland and part-time in his own garage before he could actually take off and build hot rods for a living.
I think Boyd's real talent was discovering talent and discovering ideas that he could turn into a business. Like when Little John Butera made the first billet wheels for Jamie Musselman's Roadster, Boyd thought this could be a product. I think John had made maybe a total of 12 sets or something when he was about to go on vacation, and Boyd had said, let's turn this into a business. John says, how many do you think you're going to sell? By the time John got back from his vacation, Boyd had set up a whole factory, working with Centerline, getting the outers. He had his guys machining centers, bolting them together. I can say that at the height of what Boyd's was producing, I think we were shipping 2,800 wheels a day.
Between him and Butera, they brought the billet aluminum influence to the industry. And what that did was it started to take the components to a finite detail.
Boyd's wheels and the billet craze were only the beginning of the mark he would leave on the hot rod industry. Thanks to an unparalleled talent pool, Boyd's shop would turn out some of the seminal hot rods of the 80s and 90s. In the 1980s, the hot rod scene began to cater to a much more affluent crowd than ever before. These were customers who were not afraid to spend a lot of money to have the newest, most radical hot rods ever seen. At the forefront of this movement was Boyd Coddington, a hot rodder who built a multi-million-dollar aftermarket empire on one word: smooth.
The one thing that he taught me on how you look at a hot rod, or how he perceived looking at a hot rod, is you take your eye from either the front or the back of the vehicle and you look ever so slowly at the vehicle. If your eye stops at any particular point, that needs to be removed. And it just kind of caught on. The smooth look is still around today. Other hot rod builders, just about everybody has followed in his suit.
Boyd was a very, very clever guy. He had unbelievable taste. His taste in colors and fabrics and the designs that he did were really, really sweet. He did a lot of work with Tom Taylor, and later on did a lot of work with Chip Foose.
He brought the best people together. He had great customers that had the money to build things, and he had a wheel business that was doing great and gave us the budget to go ahead and create our absolute best. Boyd was basically the puppeteer. He brought the right people in to do the job and make everybody's dream come true.
See, it's a synergy to build a hot rod. Boyd in the early days did just about everything himself, but his cars weren't AMVR winners until he gathered that synergy. And he had the uncanny ability of gathering some of the finest craftsmen from all over the world that really made Boyd Coddington hit the map.
Boyd's smooth creations caught on very quickly, and soon people from outside the culture began to appreciate a more refined style of hot rod. Where the cars used to be a symbol of counterculture ingenuity, they were now becoming highly collectible objects of art.
What people like Boyd did, and what people like Chip Foose continue to do today, are build wonderfully reliable mechanicals. They're powerful. They're safer than they ever were.
I think his true legacy is the change of attitude. He took hot rods the guys were doing in their greasy garage to a rich man's toy.
You know, he put it on the cover of the Smithsonian. He put it on the cover of the New York Times. He put it on the cover of so many media that, and some people would say that, who cares? You know, we're hot rodders. We don't care about that publicity. But looking at it from other parts of the industry, you do. The industry needs that exposure. The industry needs everybody to go, it's okay.
You know, you could come into Boyd's. If you had the money, you could put that on the table and you're going to go home with a real piece of art.
I remember being the editor of SEMA News and getting criticized for putting Boyd on the cover, and I go, well, who else is building the kind of cars that Boyd's building?
The influx of mainstream publicity officially ushered in the street rod craze and forever changed the way street rodders approached building cars.
Perhaps the fact that in the 70s and early 80s, people were doing what they called resto rods. You know, they were cars that kept all their old trim, but had modern engines and disc brakes and so forth, but they still look like old cars. People like Boyd Coddington and John Botero took a much simpler view.
The concept was not to take an old 30s body and put all brand new running gear in it. It was to actually design something that looked like it was built today, but it had the theme of an older car. When you think about the Aluma Coupe, which was a Larry Erickson design car that Boyd's built, that was pretty much a turning point in this industry where it wasn't just another 32 or 34, but it was a complete concept body car.
They literally commissioned a car the way somebody would have gone to Walter Murphy in Pasadena and said, build me a custom Duesenberg. That began to happen for Boyd, and other wealthy people saw that happening, and they kind of jumped on the trend.
It just became almost a contest to see who could take it further. And so, I'll give you a perfect example. Coddington took a 32 Ford Roadster over to Marcel, and he asked him to do the quarter panels on the car, modify them in such a way that they would be narrower and smoother and all of that. And Marcel said, why don't I just make you a car? It would be easier and less expensive. So Boyd goes, well, why not? I mean, it's a better way to go. Then I can have the fenders the way I want them and not the way Henry Ford wanted them.
And it looked like it had been chiseled out of a solid block. I mean, if it wasn't needed, if it was excess, it wasn't on that car.
Looks like a 32 Ford and it smells like a 32 Ford, but it's not a 32 Ford. And so when they found that it was easier to build bodies from scratch than modify an original, that's when things started to change.
Applying the coach-built philosophy to hot rods may have been a new idea, but Boyd's was not the only shop capable of working from scratch. Not surprisingly, competition began sprouting up all over the country. In the 1980s, Boyd Coddington's high-dollar scratch-build approach to building hot rods caught fire. The ability to design cars from a clean sheet of paper challenged builders to come up with their own style based on their personal tastes and experiences.
In the 80s, when Boyd was building those beautiful, and they were beautiful cars, I mean, he took hot rodding to a new extreme. The guys were taking the door hinges and door handles off and chopping the tops and smoothing them out. We were still building the nostalgia cars because that's what I liked. You know, Boyd was doing what he liked. I appreciated what he was doing. But the nostalgia stuff never went out of style.
Good design lasts. If we design and build something that is absolutely beautiful and timeless, then 20 years from now, they've still got a beautiful car. And they're glad that they spent the money for it. When I'm asked who my biggest influences are, number one is my father. He's my hero. He built things that I was just in awe of. But it's not just vehicles. I'll go to museums and look at paintings, I'll look at sculpture, and when I'm doing something, I go, oh yeah, I remember that. And I'll pull it out and throw it in, because you don't know if it's right or wrong until you see it. The Boyster was actually a car that I drew for San Luis Roasters for one of their car shows. The theme to that car was just take what's being done to customs and apply it to a 32 Ford. And what I wanted to do was get it lower to the ground like a custom. And so the way I got the back down was just by lifting the wheel wells up. I wedged the nose and reproportioned and changed the shape of the frame a bit and pushed the wheels forward a little further. And really had a lot of fun with just the detailing on that car.
There was a period of time in hot rodding when everything had to be smooth and absent of all things. But the Europeans, they let things be exposed, whether they be rivets or latches or plumbing or whatever. So I happen to like the fixtures and fittings to be exposed, and they become part of the art.
Third-generation craftsman Steve Mole was approaching the street rod from a very different perspective. He was looking back at the way his grandfather coach-built cars in the 1920s, then reimagining the hot rod with a more European flair.
As an interest in wanting to build bodies, learn how to build bodies, and be involved in build bodies, you start looking at all car bodies, and the European car bodies, the classic car bodies, and you start mixing those up with your hot rods. We work on Ferraris and Maseratis and things of that nature, Bugattis. They're the inspiration to do something. And then after a while, you start to develop a mix that starts to become your style. We've looked over the shoulder of great craftsmen before us. So the method that we make things is part of our style too, I think.
Steve's European-inspired Superleggera designs were probably best displayed with a bright red Ferrari-powered roadster featured on the cover of Auto Week.
That car is called the Torpedo. We built that car for Eric Zausner in San Francisco, and it's powered by a Maranello Ferrari engine. One thing that's unique is everything's handmade on that car, so everything you'll see we made in our shops. The grill's made of sheet aluminum materials, and the body's made of sheet aluminum materials. And one of the things that we wanted to do with this car is give you the impression that it didn't come out of a little local shop, but it may have been built by the Ferrari factory. So it has very Italian lines. It has a very Italian color, this Russo red color. It has ostrich interior, leather interior, and it's a very mechanical thing. The mechanical things, door handles and plumbing and fuel tank, all this is exposed. You open the trunk and you see this maze of plumbing and everything. So we never wanted to lose this mechanical contraption. So it's a sleek body, but underneath is this wonderful mechanical contraption.
Another famed builder was embracing a more traditional, nostalgic style. Roy Brizio has become a rock star in the hot rod world by evoking the forms and styles of the culture's glory days.
One of my favorite styles and favorite guys is Roy Brizio. He's a second-generation hot rodder that really gets it when it comes to putting a car together to drive and to look good. And his style is very much my style, very traditional.
What I've always tried to do over the years is build a car that looks right, sits right, correct wheel and tire stance, but late model drivetrain. An engine that every time you turn it, it starts. A 5-speed transmission, automatic, whatever you want. 4-wheel disc brakes, or at least 4-wheel drum brakes that work good. We want to make the cars safe. We want them to be enjoyable. We don't want our guys to have problems when they go places. And the safer you build them, and for me, the more straightforward they are and dependable, the more fun you have with them. I mean, most of our cars get anywhere from 10 to 50,000 miles on them in their lifetime.
The modern approach to hot rod building did more than just create a new class of cars. It also created a new kind of customer. The level of ingenuity, art, and craftsmanship displayed in these builds made it okay for celebrities like Billy Gibbons to own a hot rod that he didn't personally build in his garage. My dad Sam has a saying, "You're only as good as your customer allows you to be." And this crop of wealthy celebrity clients acted as the catalyst for the Hot Rod Bar to be continually raised.
All these people grew up reading about these old drag racing, lake race guys and this kind of thing, and so they want a piece of this.
We're doing some stuff for Eric Clapton right now, Jeff Beck, Neil Young, Reggie Jackson. I mean, I've been spoiled with a lot of great guys to work for, and they came through friendship.
Michael Anthony is the bassist for Van Halen, and he came to Boyd and commissioned Boyd to build a 33 coupe for him. It's black with flames, it's hot, it's like everything. It's really great because Michael still drives that car today. 15, 20 years later, he's still enjoying the same hot rod.
I think the celebrities love it. We all love it. Everybody's a celebrity if they're driving a hot rod.
With a renewed public interest and infusion of money and celebrity clients, the competition between builders has been steadily growing for the last 20 years. The first car to win America's Most Beautiful Roadster was the Niekamp car at the first Oakland Roadster Show in 1950. While Bill Niekamp built an elegant, clean AV8 Lakester, these days competition for the Amber and Riddler Award has pushed street rods in extreme directions, because to win such a prestigious prize means instant validation, not just for the car and the owner, but for the designer and build team as well.
If you had the means and you had a professional builder, you might win the top award. And there were enough guys around the country who were drawn to that and who began commissioning hot rods to be built.
That's what you hope for. Is somebody's going to come in and say, "Hey, let's go compete for the Riddler Award and just build a really cool car and just send me the bill."
It was, very special to be able to win the Grand National Roadster Show, and the customer I built it for was very appreciative, and that turned into a long friendship over the years.
I've been involved with 7 different cars that have won that award. Every one of them is something real special to me.
America's Most Beautiful Awards were very important to him. He won that 7 times. He was always really humbled, and whenever a car was being unveiled, he would put someone else in the car because he was too shy. He wanted that recognition, but he wanted it from afar.
I downplay it a lot too. That's when we don't win. When you lose, you downplay it. When you win, you don't downplay it. Fact of the matter is, ain't nothing like winning. Nothing like it.
I remember the first one, Wes Rydell's Grand Master. When we won the Riddler with that car, one of the proudest moments I have is stepping back and seeing that car in that display competing for the Riddler Award.
There's always this competitive atmosphere, but these are your friends. And, everybody's wishing everybody well, and everybody helps.
We're friends, competitors maybe a little bit, but friends more than anything.
Street rods are a symbol of how hot rod culture has grown and matured over the decades, showing that there's room for refinement, reliability, and even a bit of comfort in rodding. These new cars may seem to be the exact opposite of the cars that ran in the old days, but the culture is broad enough for home-built Lakesters and handcrafted street rods to exist side by side. I'm Chip Foose. Thanks for watching. Next time on American Icon, the Hot Rod.
There's more metal work being done now than I think has ever been done, and that goes to the young guys.
The crazy thing about it is it was never a real car. It was just a model. So we took the plastic model and scaled up.
And we just said, hey, when you're interested in selling, just give us a call. And luckily I had the money at the time. And I just